Breaking news. The Middle East is entering a dangerous new phase as the conflict spreads beyond its original borders. What started as a fight between Iran and Israel has turned into a bigger problem in the area, with new players joining the fight and worries throughout the world growing quickly. Yemen's Houthi forces have formally joined the battle, beginning missile and drone attacks on Israel. This is a big step up. This is the first time the group has directly taken part in the present fight, which changes the way the war is going and makes people worry that it will spread even more over the region. Until now, the war had mostly been between Iran and Israel, with allies only getting involved indirectly. But the Houthis' entrance changes the situation. It opens a new front, brings in more people, and makes things a lot more unpredictable and hard to control. At the same time, the U.S. has started sending thousands of Marines to the Middle East. Military officials say the move is intended to strengthen regional security and provide strategic flexibility, but it has also sparked concerns that the conflict could escalate into a larger military confrontation. Reuters says that U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that American military activities in Iran could end in a few weeks. But the fact that U.S. troops are still coming shows that Washington is ready for a number of scenarios, including the prospect of a long-term deployment. Iran has kept responding to the attacks that are still going on. One of the more catastrophic events was an Iranian strike on a base in Saudi Arabia that hurt 12 U.S. service members, 2 of whom were said to be in critical condition. This event shows how likely it is that U.S. and Iranian forces may come into direct conflict. The war is no longer limited to just 1 or 2 countries. Reports say that strikes and military actions are currently happening in many places, such as Lebanon and some Gulf states. This participation in multiple places is a clear sign that things are becoming worse and going beyond a regional dispute. Israel has stepped up its military actions by attacking Tehran and facilities connected to the Iranian leadership in a series of strikes. Israeli forces have also started attacking positions in Lebanon that are related to Hezbollah, which has expanded the range of military operations even more. The Houthis' entrance adds a new level of strategic difficulty. The group has shown that it can fire drones and long-range missiles, which means it can hit targets far beyond Yemen. This ability puts more pressure on defenses in the area and makes more possible threats. One of the most important things to worry about with this escalation is how it will affect trade and energy supplies around the world. The Strait of Hormuz is already under a lot of stress, and it handles a lot of the world's oil supplies. Now that the Bab al-Mandeb Strait is now under danger, shipping lines around the world are confronting problems they have never seen before. These changes have had a quick effect on energy markets. Prices for oil have shot up toward $100 a barrel because people are worried about supply problems and long-term volatility. Economists say that if things keep getting worse, it might have bad effects on inflation and economic growth around the world. The addition of more players and the growth of military operations have made the situation very unstable. Experts say that even a slight mistake could lead to a bigger escalation that brings in more countries and raises the likelihood of a long-term regional war. As the conflict gets worse, the historical causes of the problems between Iran, Israel, and the United States become more important. These countries have been in a complicated struggle for decades, determined by their political beliefs, military strategies, and regional power. The current escalation is not abrupt. It is the culmination of years of rising tension and rivalry for strategic advantage. For a long time, Israel and the United States have been quite worried about Iran's missile development. Iran has built up a network of missile facilities, mobile launch systems, and underground storage sites that can withstand strikes and keep working over time. This strength has made it hard for the enemy to completely get rid of the threat. On the other hand, Israel has always followed a policy of taking action before it is needed. Its aim has been to stop threats before they can completely materialize by employing intelligence and precise strikes to mess with the enemy's plans. The recent attacks on Iranian infrastructure are a sign of this long-standing policy. The U.S. has been both a military power and a strategic partner to its allies in the area. Its presence in the Middle East has been meant to keep things stable and protect against threats from Iran and other regional players. The fact that Marines are being deployed shows how serious the situation is and how important Washington thinks it is to be ready. The situation has changed since Yemen's Houthi army joined in. Proxy groups have been involved in regional wars for a long time, but their direct involvement in actual battle makes things more complicated and hard to anticipate. The fact that the Houthis can hit targets far away shows that geography is no longer a limit on contemporary warfare. The chance of a bigger war in the region is now higher than ever. Many countries are participating, either directly or indirectly, and alliances are being put to the test. Each new development makes it more likely that more people will get involved in the dispute, which will make it bigger. Diplomatic efforts are still going on, but they aren't making much progress. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey are some of the countries trying to help and calm things down. But the speed of military escalation is still faster than diplomatic progress, so a quick resolution is improbable. The effects of the war on the economy are becoming more and clearer. Rising oil prices, trade routes that are blocked, and a volatile market are all evidence that the effects are being felt far beyond the area where they happened. Economies around the world are keeping a careful eye on what's going on, knowing that long-term volatility could have long-term effects. Besides economic worries, the situation for people is also getting worse. People who live in affected areas are being forced to move, have trouble getting to important services, and are still at risk of violence. Aid groups are trying to help, but the size of the problem makes it very hard. Military specialists say that the current stage of the fight is quite volatile. Plans are changing, alliances are changing, and new fronts are opening up. This makes it hard to guess what will happen next and makes it much more important to keep a close eye on things as they happen. As things keep happening, the role of global powers becomes more and more important. Countries who aren't in the area are keeping a careful eye on things because they know that instability in the Middle East can have big effects on global security and economic stability. Key players' choices could affect not only the result of the fight, but also the world order as a whole. The deployment of U.S. troops is a clear sign of readiness. Officials have said that a full-scale land invasion is not currently planned, but having more troops on the ground gives them the ability to act fast if things get worse. This strategic positioning shows how unclear the situation is. Iran's capacity to keep responding despite constant strikes shows how deep their strategy is. Iran has kept a level of operational capability that makes it harder to contain the conflict by using decentralized systems and making relationships with regional factions. Israel's actions, on the other hand, show that it is serious about getting rid of threats it sees. The fact that strikes are happening in more than one area shows that people are willing to take strong action, even if it means things could get worse. This method shows how important the situation is for everyone involved. The participation of non-state entities like the Houthis exemplifies a prevailing tendency in contemporary conflict. These groups can cross borders, launch strikes that aren't equal, and change the course of fights in ways that regular military forces might not expect. Their involvement makes things even more complicated. One of the biggest risks is still the chance of making a mistake. With many people involved and tensions rising, even a small event could set off a chain reaction that leads to a bigger clash. This means that communication and strategic moderation are more vital than ever. Financial markets keep reacting to each new event. Investors are changing their plans because they don't know what's going to happen next, especially in the energy markets and trade routes. There is still a lot of worry about the possibility of problems in important places like the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. Even though there are problems, there is still hope for de-escalation. There are still diplomatic avenues open, and pressure from other countries could make the parties want to find a settlement. But everyone engaged will need to work hard, cooperate, and make sacrifices to make peace last. The situation is still very unstable right now. The fact that more actors are getting involved, more troops are being sent in, and military operations are still going on all suggest that the situation is still changing. In the next several days and weeks, it will be very important to see if tensions can be kept under control or if they will get worse. Viewers are urged to stay up to date, keep an eye on the situation, and think about what this battle means for the world as a whole. Events in one part of the world can have effects on the whole world, therefore it's more vital than ever to be aware of and comprehend what's going on. As the fight goes on, military strategy gets more complicated every day. Airstrikes, missile attacks, and drone warfare have made the battlefield both fast-moving and hard to predict. Analysts say that modern warfare in this area is no longer just about traditional fighting. It also uses advanced technologies and asymmetric tactics. The fact that both sides are using drones has transformed the fight in a big way. These unmanned technologies make it possible to hit targets with great accuracy while putting fewer people in danger. But they also make attacks happen more often, which makes it tougher for defense systems to deal with every threat that comes their way. Missile defense systems are always under stress because they have to deal with waves of strikes. Many missiles are stopped before they hit their objectives, but some do hit their targets, causing damage and raising questions about how well present defenses work. This continual debate shows how bad the conflict is. The Houthi forces in Yemen have made the threats even wider. Their capacity to hit targets well outside their own boundaries shows how non-state actors are getting better at what they do. This makes military planning harder and makes regional powers reassess how they protect themselves. At the same time, naval troops are quite important for protecting important waterways. Military ships are stationed in key areas to show how important it is to keep shipping routes under control. Any problems in these areas might have an immediate effect on the supply of energy and trade around the world. The economic effects of these military changes are becoming more and more clear. In many countries, rising oil costs are having an effect on transportation, manufacturing, and the cost of living in general. Businesses are changing how they do things to deal with uncertainty, and governments are keeping a close eye on the issue. Aside from the economic effects, the humanitarian effects keep getting worse. People living in the affected areas have to deal with uncertainty every day since they can't get to important services, and there are always security threats. Living in a combat zone has a big effect on people's minds and communities in many ways. International groups are trying to help, but the size of the problem makes it hard to do so. As the situation changes, it becomes harder to coordinate, secure, and provide aid in combat zones. Efforts to improve relations between countries are still going on, but they are going slowly. International delegates and regional leaders meet to try to lower tensions, but it's hard to reach an agreement because the dispute is so complicated and there are so many parties involved. Experts say that the current stage of the conflict is a tipping point. Choices made now could change the course of events for months or even years. This means that everyone needs to plan carefully and think strategically. As the world continues to pay attention to the Middle East, the importance of international alliances is growing. Countries are looking at their options and weighing both political and economic issues as they decide how to deal with the changing scenario. The United States still has a major presence in the area, and its troops there work as both a deterrent and a quick response team. Officials have said again that their goal is to safeguard their interests and alliances while avoiding making things worse. Iran, on the other hand, seems determined to stick to its guns, using both direct and indirect means to respond to continued attacks. The fact that it can change and keep going even when things get tough shows how strong its military strategy is. Israel's ongoing operations show that it is serious about dealing with dangers it sees. The increase in its strikes shows that it is taking action, but it also makes people worry about the possibility of more violence. The fact that many different parties are involved, including non-state entities, shows how war has changed in the modern world. These groups can have a big impact on events since they often work outside of normal systems, which makes things less predictable. The chance of things getting worse is always there. With tensions high and many fronts open, even tiny events could have big effects. This shows how important it is to talk to each other and work together to avoid undesired results. Financial markets keep reacting to news, and investors are keeping a watchful eye out for signals of stability or more trouble. Changes that could alter supply and demand are still very important to energy markets. Even though it's hard, people are still trying to calm things down. Even though diplomatic lines are tight, they are still open, which might help ease tensions. But success will depend on everyone being willing to work together in a positive way. It is apparent that this battle is not limited to one area as things change. It has effects on economies, politics, and security all around the world. This interconnectedness makes it a global issue. Uncertainty is still the most important thing about the scenario right now. The mix of military action, economic effects, and diplomatic attempts makes for a complicated situation that needs to be watched and thought about carefully as things continue to happen. As the war reaches this important point, the next few days will be very important. Military actions, political talks, and strategic choices might all have an effect on the region's destiny. Analysts say that mistakes by any side may quickly make the situation worse, bringing in more countries and groups. The Houthis' arrival has changed the essence of the battle, showing that borders no longer keep regional conflicts from spreading. Their ability to hit targets far from Yemen makes things even more complicated, making both Israel and the United States rethink how they defend themselves and respond. In the meantime, the United States still has a strong military presence, with new Marines being sent to the area. This deployment shows that we are both ready to respond to new threats and are using it as a strategic deterrence. Officials also highlight that the purpose is to keep the conflict from spreading and defend global interests, especially oil supply routes. Iran is still a key player, showing that it can adapt and be strong in its military operations. It uses airstrikes, missile launches, and proxy organizations in a coordinated way to make sure that its power is still felt on many fronts. This tenacity makes the war very hard to foresee and keeps both regional and global participants in the dark for longer. Israel is still carrying out targeted strikes against important locations, even though it is facing threats from many sides. These actions are meant to stop dangers before they get worse, but they also run the risk of making things worse and bringing in more people to the fight. The effects on the economy are getting worse. Oil prices have gone up a lot, energy markets are still unstable, and people are keeping a careful eye on global commerce. Analysts say that long-term instability could have implications on the global economy, affecting everything from the cost of transportation to energy security. Concerns about people in need are growing. People who live in affected areas are being forced to move, have trouble getting to important services, and face constant security risks. Aid groups are getting ready, but the size of the issue makes it hard to get things done and keep people safe. International diplomacy is still going on, but not much progress has been made. Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia are trying to mediate, while the rest of the world is waiting to see whether anyone shows restraint. But the rate of military escalation is still faster than diplomatic attempts. The Houthis and other non-state actors are now involved in modern warfare. It is harder to guess what will happen when groups work across boundaries and have advanced skills. This raises the stakes for everyone engaged. Their involvement also shows how complicated and multifaceted the current crisis is. As tensions rise, the chance of things getting worse goes up. Every strike, missile launch, or military move could start a bigger war. Analysts stress that making decisions carefully and talking to each other are important to avoid unforeseen results. Even if things are quite tense, there is still hope for things to calm down. There are still diplomatic channels open, and pressure from other countries could help keep things calm. To get enduring peace, People will need to work together, make sacrifices, and be willing to back down from more fighting. It is very important for both civilians and observers to grasp how this conflict is changing. The Middle East scenario has far-reaching effects on not just regional security, but on the global economy, energy markets, and ties between countries. As the world watches, leaders must find a way to balance their strategic goals with the risk of escalation. In the next few weeks, it will be very important to see if the situation calms down, becomes worse, or turns into a long-term regional crisis. Viewers are urged to stay informed, keep an eye on updates, and understand how events around the world are connected. What happens in one part of the world today can have an effect on the economy, safety, and daily life in other parts of the world tomorrow. Being aware and understanding are important for getting through these tough times. This is a very important time for the Middle East and the rest of the globe. This is one of the most important crises in recent history since the conflict is spreading. New parties are getting involved, and military, political, and economic variables are all working together in complicated ways. It's more crucial than ever to stay informed, involved, and ready. Keep an eye out for updates and remember that knowledge is power. When we understand the whole picture, we can see beyond the headlines and understand what is really at stake in this changing battle.